Hello, welcome to Direct Joy. My name's Cherie Joy, and I am a psychotherapist, psychologist, counsellor, ecotherapist, a mum, a wife, and I am bringing you Direct Joy today. It's been a few weeks, it's been a while, lots of happenings and comings and goings in my life. So but back to hopefully more of a pattern and routine of bringing you Direct Joy, because it is truly my passion to provide free mental and emotional health advice, to provide therapy support, to provide education, to provide information that really helps us with our mental and emotional health and our physical health too. And today's query came through from a very dear person in my life, a very valuable person who said, what about the physical side? Hey, you talk about it all the time, but where is it in Direct Joy? And I was like, oh, okay, let's do some talking about the physical side of the pain wisdom, as I kind of refer to it as, because pain, sensations, nudges, alerts, stuff that's going on in our body. What is that? Physical, okay, yeah, it's physical. It's a physical pain. But if we understand our whole system and our holistic health, it's more than that. And we need to go that level deeper. When you work with me in therapy, we understand the symbolism and the meanings and the metaphors of everything in our lives. That's what we do. We go into the deep, we go into the shadows, we go into the understandings of everything. It's tailor-made exactly for you, for your body, your mind, your emotions. But in Direct Joy, we are invited to a place to think about what actually is happening, what is going on in our bodies. So we all experience pain, we all experience sensations, we all experience our physicality, who we are to be human, to have this physical form, this strength yet fragility. It's a rather existential question, really, isn't it? And that certainly is much deeper than we have time for today. But what do we have time for today? Hello to all of you that are live, and hello to all of you on the replays as well. What do we have time for? What do we understand our bodies to do in relation to these pains? Where do we feel our pains? Where in your body is pains and sensations specifically? Do you hold trauma? There's an excellent book called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Van der Kolk, and it's an excellent book around trauma. Now, trauma can be experienced as anything that we experience as traumatic, basically, and we can hold this stuff in our body. We literally hold trauma in our body. And I was writing notes, as I do in preparation for Direct Joy, and I went down a really old school route. And when I say old school, I mean really old school. I was hearing like kind of some of my ancestors as I was writing these things down about the fact of being a stress head, or having nervous legs, or a sad belly, or what a joyful gut, a joyful belly. Some of these phrases, especially things like nervous legs and stress head, actually they make sense. Louise Hay from Hay House talks about very much the more spiritual side, or alternatively spiritual side, of the fact that specific physical symptoms relate to specific understandings of, for example, anger and guilt and jealousy. And, for example, having dreams about teeth is ordinarily understood to be a massive change in your life. Now, these can be taken as generalizations, but what happens when we start to think about them specifically for your body? Do you get stress head? When you get stressed, does it go to your head? where in your head does it go to? Because if we go to the neuroscience, right, and now we're getting serious, we're talking about neuroscience. We're not talking about kind of, necessarily the wise women or the wise men of the families giving us information, which personally I take very seriously. But we're talking about neuroscience, we're talking about research, we're talking about understandings of the brain, yeah? And they tell us that headaches in the frontal lobe are related to guilt. What's happening with your guilty feelings when you have a headache or a migraine that's related to the frontal lobe? Wow. We understand in yoga that when we are able to place our head, usually in child pose, although it can be in other poses, and we can also place a flat palm against this part of our frontal lobe, it quietens our nervous system. It allows our whole nervous system to flatten. There's the flat part of the palm, the flat part of your head here. If you just press that, just very slightly, just as if you were in child pose against the floor, it literally is able to flatten down anything that you are experiencing. It allows that sense of calm, that pain, that sensation, that alert, that nudge is calmed. It's pressed against another object, as in the floor, the earth, against the palm of your hand, and it allows a settling. And that settling has a message then, because actually you have space. It's a bit like my saying, if in doubt, do now. That allows you time and space to think about, well, what really is going on here? Am I feeling guilty? Am I feeling stressed? Have I got too much on? What's going on for me? What's happening with nervous legs? What are we reluctant to wibble wobble towards? We aren't born able to walk or run or jump, yet as adults we are forcing ourselves every day to move through things that maybe go against and out of alignment with who we are. We know from our understanding of the emotional world and from the mental world that our emotions and our mentality goes out of whack. That's where emotional and mental illness comes from. But what about physical? What about those alerts? What about those pains? What happens in our fascias? What happens in our muscles? What happens? What's going on? And what is it helping us to understand through our body and our mind? Practices such as yoga, such as fascia trauma work, such as somatic movement. What allows us to move through this stuff when we allow our toes to go through the earth, when we allow the sand and the water to move us through that pain? It's not always as easy as going out for a walk outside in your garden or into the woods and going into the sea, or allowing yourself a nice warm bath, or doing child's pose and allowing yourself that space and time. Of course it's not. Pain is pain, and it needs space and time, and respecting that our physical bodies are doing a great deal more than we ever even begin to think about comprehending. We don't even know, even the amount of science that we have, we don't even know half of what we do. We use 8 to 9% of our brain when we're at full capacity in an exam. At this present time, you're maybe using 3 or 4%. That is just mind-blowing in itself. So what happens to our capacity when we are in pain? We get snappy, we can't sleep, we sleep too much. We make decisions that may be about nutrition, or maybe about relationships, or about work that maybe aren't ones that we would make if we felt tip-top 100%. Our capacity and what we're then fueled by is having consequences. So we can see the build-up of the fact that when we're in physical pain, for whatever reason, it may be an accident, it may be an emotional pain, it may be a mental pain, it may be a pain for so many, is it auxiliary pain? I think that's, someone might have to correct me on that, but pain like, say for example, if your hips are hurting, your knee might go out. It could be that, it could be a sports injury, it could be so many reasons, and it's helpful to think about the reasons, but it's also helpful to think about the consequences, because the consequences are also something that we're dealing with. Being in tune with all of this is part of the wellness journey. Excuse me. Being in tune with what the messages are, how we deal with things, what our behavioural patterns are really, really helpful. So, for example, if you're feeling particularly sad, where does that go? What happens? Where do you understand it in your body? If you're feeling particularly angry, so let's think about some generalizations. Okay, so there's some generalizations on the fact that we get a sad belly. Okay, so you might find that there's bloating, you may find that you have more wind, you might be constipated, you might get diarrhea, there may be certain foods that you need to stay away from. If you're angry, more so the generalization is that that's in your throat. So it's about how hard it is to speak that truth. What happens when we go through years and years and generations of those pains? What happens in our gut? What happens in our throat? What happens in our heart? What happens in our stress head, our guilt head? What happens? How do you understand it? How do your families understand it? How do the wise people in your communities understand that? And how do we heal it? Do we heal it through talking about it, through being honest? Because that's hard, right? Showing up, being honest, being vulnerable, it's tough. Being completely honest with ourselves is tough, let alone being honest with those around us. Sometimes it's easier to be honest with those around us rather than actually ourselves, which is where therapy works, right? There is the tension that is actually a really healing tension. We're able to be more honest with strangers where there's less investment in that relationship. That's one of the reasons it works. What's it like to tune into that for you? It needs time. It needs space. We understand it as illness, but actually, is it more about actually bringing about peace and understanding, and we bring that to our bodies first? We go down to the roots of the fact that what do we need? We need our basic needs met when we're ill. Everything else stops, doesn't it? I know certainly that has been a lesson for me time and time again, that actually I'm not invincible, and however much I want to share what I have with the world, share Cherie, actually I need to look after my body and my mind and my emotional state too. It's one of the reasons that I do this work. We teach what we most need to learn ourselves, being vulnerable with that, and allowing myself to rest on the sofa, allowing myself to rest in my garden, allowing myself to rest with my beautiful surroundings, allowing myself to rest when it doesn't feel beautiful at all, when it feels raw and messy and ugly and sick and just downright disgusting and off track. What's that like? Where do those pains go for you? Because that's where we need to start. Where are the nudges? And they hurt. They are real. They are real messy show up hurts. And the more and more we suppress them, the more and more they hurt. The more and more we say, it's okay, I'm not crying, it's okay, I'm fine. Someone once told me that the fine stands for effed up, inconsolable, neurotic, and every which way not okay. Something like that. If you've got any other ideas of what fine could stand for, let me know. So how can we tune in to what that really means? What is our gut telling us? What food do we want to be fueled by? What work do we want our brains to be saturated with? What nutrients of relationships do we want our toes to run through? What water do we want of our abundance to flow through? What is our wellness journey? if we begin with the pain in our body, if we begin with those nudges, if we begin with understanding the wonky bits there, my understanding is that that is the magic. That's the miracle. I love the understanding of the Phoenix, and my daughter is a massive Harry Potter fan, and as are we, right? Yeah, as is most people, I'm sure. Who doesn't like Harry Potter? And if you don't, that's cool. But understanding the Phoenix, understanding the ashes, understanding that the tears are there, that is part of the healing. Understanding that the ashes, the burning away is there too. The snake, the shedding of the skin, that is the magic. And I love to translate the word magic to miracles. They're the miracles. They're the perspective changes, yeah? What does it feel like when you have a really good cry? What does it feel like when actually it's burnt to the ground? And, you know, I know that I've been through experiences that have burnt to the ground my life, basically. The majority of my life, as I knew it. And from there, I grew what I have now. I had to let go. I had to let God. And that's my invitation always in therapy, is to invite the miracle, invite the magic, invite the perspective change, because it's through that we're able to access what's really going on with the pains, what's really going on, to alert us to understanding what the symptoms are, what our capacity is, what we're fueled by, what the patterns are. This is a pretty full-on direct joy today, but it's an invitation to think about, how do you move your body and mind? How do you understand your body and mind? How do you translate this? And how much time do you give this to, right? Now, some of us have the privilege. Yeah, don't use that word lightly. Some of us have the privilege of being able to afford therapy. That is one of the reasons that I bring you Direct Joy, because do you know what? We all are entitled to this information. If you can't have time, space, and you don't have the money for private therapy, it's harder through the NHS to get it, especially the type of therapy that I talk about. It doesn't necessarily exist very much on the NHS, dependent on who you get as a therapist. I'm going to be introducing Wise and Joy, which is a package which is going to go a bit deeper than Direct Joy, which is going to be a paid for package, but it's going to be a low price. And I'm keeping it low deliberately because I want it to be accessible. And Direct Joy will continue still as well, because this information does need to be out there. Whether you agree with it or whether you disagree with it, I want to hear it from you, because actually, if you disagree with it, that's where the conversation starts, and that's where it gets really exciting, because there are so many different views. This is just Cherie Joy's view from my training, my experience, my life, my clinical, my work, and who I am. It's my offering as who I am as Cherie. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear what's going on in your world, and anything that you want to hear about in Direct Joy, please get back to me. Let's start more conversations about mental, emotional and physical health, because we are all in it together. And we're all on a well journey, because that's the way that it's intended to be, wellness. So for today, I think we'll leave it there. It's really awesome to be able to connect with you again. Stay tuned. There's lots going on. If you're around this Sunday in Bexhill, we have a workshop on emotional intelligence. If you're around this Friday, so 48 hours time, 7 o'clock on Friday night, I have my Women's Circle in Bexhill Old Town. My online offerings still exist. My face-to-face ecotherapy and psychotherapy still exists. None of this is going anywhere. I continue to grow, and look out for more from me, basically. Sign up to my website if you want to hear more. And it's so lovely to connect with you. So I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful day, and please stay in touch, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon for the next Direct Joy. Okay, peace, love and joy.